A man chooses, a slave obeys.
Welcome to the Ethics in Video Games podcast, where we explore issues at the intersection of ethics and video games.
What follows is a series of graphic, interactive scenes that we can't show you.
Welcome, everybody. We're here with Daniel Joseph, Senior Lecturer of Digital Sociology at Manchester Metropolitan University, where he researches internet infrastructure, platforms, apps, and games. He's also written for a number of publications, including Briar Patch Magazine, Motherboard, and Real Life Magazine. Daniel Joseph, welcome to the show. Yeah!
Thank you for having me. I'm really appreciating to be here.
All right, so we're here to talk about battle passes. So, Daniel, let's start with this. What are battle passes? How do they differ from traditional subscription models or microtransactions? And why are they such a big deal in the gaming world?
So what is a battle pass? Basically, it's a series of achievement bars and all these kinds of things associated with like free-to-play games. So like it finds its origins in Dota 2, which was as a kind of like fundraising mechanism for their big international competitive tournament. And so it starts there on Steam, like through the Valve ecosystem as a way of like raising money. Normally you pay back then, maybe probably now with inflation, prices have gone up, roughly between $10 to $15 for a season's worth of content. And rather than getting access to anything particularly related to gameplay, it's normally you get access to cosmetic items. So new kinds of outfits, new kinds of, weapon skins in the case of, Counter-Strike or Apex Legends or other kinds of games like that. Items that might, change how not just your avatar, but maybe how your game looks or how it sounds. Basically, but the point is that you get tasks every day, every week, every month that you have to complete. And by filling these bars over the course of a season, you then unlock all these things.
Gotcha.
And the second part of that question was how do they differ from subscription models, right? Yeah. So like they're different in the sense that like these are often optional. Some games will have a battle pass that's a free version that you unlock some items with, but almost always there is a paid component to it, and it's distinct from a subscription because like you're not paying to get access to playing the game. Instead, what you're subscribing to is actually just like the access to unlock content through gameplay. But at the same time, almost all of these allow you to actually pay money to rank up in them as well, which is kind of like, I guess if you're in a rush, you can do that. Or if you didn't play enough by the end of the season, you can unlock everything as well. So there are other ways of dumping even more money into it. So, and we'll maybe talk about how many different microtransactions and currencies exist within this. And yeah, and these often augment microtransactions themselves. So oftentimes you can still buy or use other currencies to buy other cosmetic items, but the battle pass is designed as a kind of like, it'll have unique things that you can only unlock through the battle pass.
So by unlocking, you still have to acquire it somehow.
Yes, yeah, you need to play the game, and then you need to like actually get that item. Like it unlocks it as a kind of like inventory on your inventory screen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like buying access to a store.
Yeah, it's like buying access to a store where if you walked in and you looked at everything that you wanted to buy, they could be like there's a lot of dollar signs above it. But also there's like a treadmill that you could go over and run on. And then that by running on that treadmill, you can then get they throw you like a bag of potato chips and then like, a Pepsi at you and, once every day or something like that. Right. It's very, so.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So we got to get into the details of that. Before we do, I kind of want to go back to how you said they started. That seemed kind of interesting. So are you saying they started as a way of, and I didn't quite get that in Dota 2, as a way of raising money?
Yeah. So the international,
like what's that, like a Kickstarter of a sort, or for the next season?
Yeah, and like this was kind of all part of like Valve's enclosed ecosystem on Steam and them kind of like innovating in ways to raise money and get money and like have users pay for it, because Dota 2 has been free, I believe since launch, and so and they augmented that and made sure its community was active through their international tournament. which like every year has a big prize pool and stuff. And so by getting the battle pass, you would actually be donating money to this prize pool, and then like kind of augmenting and increasing the excitement of the final competition at the end of the year. It's like, hey, look, so much money was raised from people who are using the battle pass as well. So it's definitely like,
that's cool.
Most other companies haven't done this, but this is a very like Valve thing, because they have a money printing machine that lets them do whatever they want. So
and it's sort of interesting to take a traditional tournament where you would pay money to join a tournament, and then that money goes into the prize pool, or some portion of that money goes into the prize pool, and you could potentially win that money back. But in this case, you don't win the money back.
No, yeah. It's like you've given it to like, yeah. But I think a big part of this,
glory,
it's like, it's all about like being an engaged part of the community, right? Like you're invested as a member of this. I never played Dota, so like I can't speak from experience, but like this is the kind of the origin point of it, which is interesting.
Yeah, it is. That's totally interesting. Let's get to the third part. What's the big deal about battle passes? They seem to be everywhere. They've been around for a while. Why are they a big deal? Why are we talking about them here today?
I mean, because video game monetization is changing rapidly. And also, like, I study this stuff in a sense, like I've studied a lot of like apps and free-to-play games and things in the last 5-6 years of my career, because like they make the most money. Just I'm a political economist. Like I want to know who's making the money, right? And like you can't study, I think, AAA game space, mobile game space, any kind of game space without grappling with the fact that like free-to-play games are just churning out tons of cash for the people who develop and publish them. And battle passes are a big augmentation to that business model alongside other kinds of microtransactions. So, kind of got it to that area by way of it.
That just for the people out there who think, oh, well, if I want to make money, I should just make a free-to-play game. That's there are a lot of games out there that don't make money too.
Yes.
So, so just in case you're wondering, not all of them just churn out money like this. But yeah, the ones that do very, very well.
And that's a key thing of like the other part of my research is like looking at app stores and like who wins and loses in them. And like the top 100 apps make 90% of all revenue. So if you make a game, you don't get into that top 100, like you're fighting for the pittance of what's left, right? Yeah. So
yeah.
So battle passes are essentially, they're an additional source of monetization, right? They're not competing here with traditional monetization, microtransaction, loot boxes, etc. What's it like about them, right? If you're a game company, why would you want to include battle passes?
In a sense, like I'll kind of maybe talk about this a little bit later and more in depth, but like you're fighting for attention, and especially in multiplayer games and any game with like a community. I think your biggest competition, it might not necessarily even be other games, but you're going to be competing with other forms of entertainment and media and stuff. And I think they turn to these systems of monetization as well as engagement, because a battle pass does give you, a few tasks to do every day, right? So it keeps you coming back and engaged. And that's, I think, the value proposition is like the player gets to unlock some things, and it kind of ensures that they turn it on, if not every day, a couple times a week, to make sure that they're advancing through the ladder and unlocking the stuff. Even if I think at the end of the day, I buy one of these things every season for the games that I play. And I don't even know if I care about the stuff all that much, but I'm just like, well, I don't know, like bar go up, I guess, right? Like, oh, I get a flashy item. So it is, I think it's a wise move if you have the player base that's big enough for it, and you want to keep them engaged.
Yeah, the daily average user is a really, really important number that these people track, and it gets tracked for advertisers, and so it makes a big difference if your game also has advertising revenue associated with it. The idea that you have this many people coming and playing it every day.
Yeah.
It's really
huge.
Important.
And I think also the other benefit to it is that it's seen as a less toxic kind of monetization model than loot boxes. Loot boxes are being regulated all around the world right now. Whether or not or more accurately, governments are looking into them all around the world right now. Whether or not they're being regulated is another matter. And so
Right.
the I think if you're a game company or it's like you can look at this, and the value proposition is very clear to, I think, to users, which is like, you play, you get some stuff, there's no randomness, there's no slot machine similarities, and the connection between gambling, which is again the source of most of the inquiries, is it's not there, or in the same way. So, and there's no pay to win stuff associated with it as well. So
I think it also provides these games, which would otherwise be endless, these sort of important moments of beginning, middle, and end. So each of these seasons has like its own flow, and so can give people a good jumping on point and good and excitement for the next thing that happens. There might be some slight rules changes or variations to the gameplay that are specific to the season.
So you're avoiding like the endless RPG loop, where you keep
you're providing...
trying to level up and level up and level up for no purpose, and you're not getting anywhere. Here, it actually feels like an event happens, something's done, and then we start fresh.
That's right.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that's really, really valuable from a player's point of view.
Playing with like a battle pass to like the time, like when I was playing like Apex Legends when it first came out, there wasn't a battle pass, and it was really like, I'm just playing this game of like constant repetition, dropping, shooting a gun, dying, doing it again. And like it did feel less meaningful. And that was the same in Fortnite as well, which introduced their battle pass system, I think, a little bit before then. And so, yeah, I think just in terms of like having a goal, like here's a thing you can do, here's a little mission, right? Like it does provide, if you enjoy the kind of friction that a little goal gives you, it's there, right?
And also there's leaderboards that are specific to the season, right?
In the games that I play, there aren't, but
really? Okay.
Would not be surprised at all if, like Counter-Strike Go is all leaderboards, like,
right.
I'm sure Call of Duty has that as well, and I'm sure, and Dota definitely will probably have leaderboards and other kinds of things, affiliated with those seasons, because like the seasonal also plays into our sense of like sport, like institutionalized, established sport seasons sounds right, so yeah.
Okay, I want to go back to what you said about pay to win, right? Pay to win is something certainly would be a red flag if we're concerned with ethics. Lots of people think pay to win is unfair. You mentioned essentially we have this kind of situation where, because I thought you were going to say these are a form of pay to win. Because you said we have this kind of situations where you can maybe pay a premium, and you said somebody could potentially be grinding for a very long time and get a little bit of stuff versus pay and get all the stuff. Is this not pay to win because all the stuff that we're talking about, everything is only cosmetic? We have nothing that actually gives you an advantage in the game. Is that the idea?
Generally speaking, yes. I think ever since the Battlefront 2 controversy, I think game companies have really understood that like that kind of aggressive monetization of microtransactions tied to in-game abilities really wasn't in their interest, and it could cause like significant backlash. Even if the game sold relatively well, they need players to be playing over the time. You really need a constantly engaged user base, right? So I think pay to win, any kind of pay to win mechanic within these games now is basically like kept far away. That being said, it doesn't hold for certain kinds of mobile games, and whether or not they use battle passes, I would be interested in, because there's a lot of games that I haven't seen or investigating this mechanic in. I would expect them to probably not do it if they were really concerned with kind of equality of, like skill being the primary adjudicator of where you fall on that leaderboard. But obviously games with, time clocks and other kinds of, gates that keep you from playing unless you're spending money. This kind of thing could definitely feed into that. But for the big AAA releases, I think they stay very far away from pay to win.
So we don't have pay to win, but do we have concerns about excluding or harming low income players?
Yeah, I think I think definitely like in any kind of, I mean, if aesthetics and how we dress and all these kinds of things are definitely like signaling processes around, who's in, who's out, who has money, who doesn't. I think any kind of microtransaction tied to cosmetic items has those kinds of risks of exclusion. And low income people, this is actually probably the easiest way for them to get into spending a little bit of money. It's pretty, I think for if you're, young and you don't have a lot of money, you can go to your parents and say like, can I have, $13 for the season battle pass in Apex Legends? And they'll probably say, yeah, because you're not going to have to do that until next season. And actually, after you've done that, because of the ridiculous amount of currency systems they have in these, you actually unlock the paid currency that the battle pass has nested within it as one of its unlocks. So actually, if you get all of that currency, you could get the next one next season for free.
Oh, really?
So it's like it's that, and there's so many different currencies in Apex Legends. There's 3, so it's like you can kind of get yourself onto a path towards like getting it constantly free. But of course, you could spend that currency that you've unlocked on a premium item from the store elsewhere in the game. So
right,
it does give you an on-ramp to the monetization systems at a lower price, but the cost is you got to play to get that stuff for free. That being said, right. I think still, all these cosmetic systems like can lead to whale behavior, right?
And that on-ramp is super important too, because they know that once somebody pays $1 for something, this person is willing to pay money for stuff.
Yes.
Right. And there's a big gap. There's like that first step is a doozy. It's like it's the most important step. If you're willing to pay $1, then you're probably willing to pay $5, and you're probably willing to pay $10, and you're probably willing to pay $25. We just have to offer you the right thing, as opposed to somebody who just never pays for anything. There's a really big gap between nothing and $1, whereas there's very little steps between $1 and $5 and $10 and $25 or whatever.
Absolutely. And because getting money into these systems is like, it's not particularly onerous, but for instance, if you don't have a credit card, you got to go to a shop, you got to buy a gift card, go into the system, plug that gift card information in. So there's just enough steps that like, if you've done that, like you're in,
Right.
So,
yeah. All the friction is behind you. You're nothing but golden payments from here on out.
Exactly.
So let's go into this currency thing, right? Because you talked about, and this is maybe the most confusing part for me, right? Another type of bring in yet another type of currency into the game. And we've talked in this show about the practice of multiple currencies and the reasons for them. And now we're talking about yet another one. And this one is connected to limited timed availability of items, right? So you've got so you can only spend this currency within the season and only on these items. Is that the idea?
Actually, yeah. So no, what actually you unlock is one of the 3 currency. Generally speaking, you'll unlock one of the many currencies in these systems that can be spent on different things in versions of the store. So the items that are in the battle pass are going to still be gated by either the paid currency, like the currency that you can only unlock by paying for it. You could get more levels doing that. Or you need to play and unlock those levels. So the battle pass kind of ends there. But what you will unlock when you play these games is some versions of the paid currency that you can then spend on items in the virtual store for different cosmetic items that are not available in the battle pass. So normally they have a weekly rotation of goods that are on sale, and then those will refresh, and then there'll be something different. And so like weekly, there'll be different things, and then there'll be a limited time collection event. And that limited time collection event will allow you to spend 2 of the currencies, but not the 3 currencies, and they'll all have different values, and I think the most interesting thing is like, it's really unclear what their convertibility is and how they relate to real money. Like, I think that's that's the thing that's like,
and that's key, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So these things don't have real world value. So
They don't have any real world value insofar as they can be translated into, let's say, dollars or pounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
But of course, they have value to the people who care about them. And they also have interchangeable value sometimes to other currencies within the game. Though maybe not in this case. So what's
generally once you buy something, you cannot resell it.
Yeah.
Right.
Generally speaking.
Right. What I meant was that to buy that, you could potentially convert maybe one kind of currency that you have in the game to another kind of currency in the game.
Yeah. So what's funny is like it'll be like this. So there'll be there'll be the paid currency. Like if you go into the store, it'll be like you can buy this for 1,000 Apex bucks, but there's also crafting metals. And to craft this item, it'll cost you 12,000 of those. And those crafting metals can be unlocked by using the battle pass. But the battle pass also unlocks paid currencies. So you're unlocking two kinds of currencies in that, which have different values and can be spent on different items. And so the crafting metals will be, again, this is the kind of thing where it's like they're wildly different in value. And where one can be spent, exactly, and where one can be spent is not always the same place as the other one can be spent. And then there's a third one, which is, I think, different. It's called a token or something like that. I don't know. And that can only be spent to buy new legends in the game. So like, which are the characters you play as. So the point is that like there's 3 in this game that I play, and it's hard to know which one goes where and in what value and in what currency. And importantly, like Andy said, you can never take it out, and technically none of this you own. This is like, this is all just fun. This is all just fun. Like that's, in the company reserves all rights. And that is that, like, these are entitlements that we can take away from you at any moment at our discretion.
So, Daniel, when you say it's hard to understand, normally when we talk about a product being hard to understand, we talk about some sort of failure of design from the company. But here we're talking about something intentional, right? So is there a problem with that? Why is it intentionally hard to understand?
I think it's because I think my guess is, and I can't say for certain because I haven't interviewed the people that work at these companies, but I think they have probably consulted some psychological research, and they've probably also talked with consultants from other industries where they've kind of pointed out that there's like a certain, by adding layers of abstraction from, the United States dollar or, British pound or whatever, like the more layers of abstraction, the more people start to like not really know how they're spending money. And it increases incentives to put money into these systems. And importantly, whenever you buy them, you'll always be bought in strange currency, like in denominations that don't seem, it's not like $1 for 100 of these. It'll be like $1 for 140 or 135. But there's bonus if you buy in quantity in bulk. So, then it changes that calculation again.
And sales, they'll have sales,
yes.
Or, time limited sales. The other thing I think it's important to say is, like, they make it hard to understand, but what is it? And the thing that's hard to understand is the comparable value between any of these currencies or any of the objects in the game that you can buy with these different currencies. And I think the reason for that is because there is no need to ever try to convert one thing into another, and they don't want you trying to figure out what the conversion rate is.
Right.
Because there's never a reason to.
Yeah.
And it's sort of on one hand, it's like, well, there's never a reason to. You can't actually convert one thing into another. So we don't want you spending your time thinking about that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That sounds like you're helping us. Right? You're helping us avoid thinking about useless things and focus on the game instead.
That's exactly right.
As opposed to mudding the waters about how much things cost, so we just pay up without thinking too much about what it's worth.
Right. Well, you think about what it's worth to you at the moment.
Yeah.
And so that's the only comparable value that matters.
I think the thing is where it gets confusing is that like some of these things you've like paid money for, like real money for, and then at the other time, like, you've also, what you've done is actually paid out in time, right? Like in the amount of play that you've done. And then that's the, when I wrote this paper, I recorded a video because it was COVID and we're all presenting online. And so, I was presenting at this game studies conference online, and I recorded a video of it. And in my walkthrough of using the game, I like went and I was like trying to demonstrate spending one of the currencies, and I went and I accidentally bought something, and I was like, oh, damn, like and I really tried to think, I was like, how many hours of play did I just accidentally spend on this thing that I didn't want? Right. And there's no way for me to get it back. I guess I could have emailed them like, I really promise I didn't want that. Can you give me back my crafting medals, which have no monetary value? Because you're right. You can't, there is no equivalent, right? It's not, it's not money. It's time. But at the same time, I was like, I don't actually know what this time is. It's hard to know, like what are things worth, right? Like at the kind of deep philosophical level, it's actually kind of hard to understand.
Right. What is your sweat equity worth in a game, in a free to play game?
Right. And
we're comparing what are currencies of entirely different kind, right? Especially when you're talking about time versus money, right? And quality of time versus time, right? It's these are things that are incredibly difficult to compare, and few people think they can be standardized.
And in the real world, they can't be standardized either.
Some people have thought that, you can, think about how economists think about this stuff, right? You can standardize anything according to how much someone is willing to pay for it, right?
Right, but like a minute of my time is not 1/60th of an hour of my time. I will give you a minute of my time for free.
Okay.
But you have to pay me for an hour of my time.
Right, yeah.
Right?
That's great.
And if you want a week of my time, it's even more money.
Is it more money than the combined amount of hours of your time?
Oh yeah.
In
some cases less. Like in my freelance job, if you want, you can hire me for an hour, or you can hire me for a day, or you can hire me for a week, or however. But I don't want to work for anyone for a full week, so I make that the most expensive option. But the daily rate is actually better than my hourly rate.
Right. So
I do want to focus on your job for a full day.
Right. So the exchange that you are giving really kind of concerns your personal value system of how much exactly you'd like to do. So the quantity of any particular good for you differs on how much of that good you want. And you have this kind of sweet spot, in between too much and too little. And you're going to price yourself to promote that sweet spot.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know how that relates, but
well, I think it relates in the sense of like, if I do Marxist political economy. So I'm always thinking about what is 20 yards of linen, one coat kind of thing. Like what is value theory in the context of like digital scarcity when there is no scarcity.
Right.
And that's the thing about like buying digital items and like attaching values to them. Because it really does come down to like, what do people perceive as it being worth to them when there's actually like, you paid an artist to make that. So it did take some time to make. You have to distribute it, it takes up a tiny amount of space on a server, fractions of pennies to move it across to you over the internet and all this kind of stuff. But the actual like value of that good it is no mooring to what its actual like the amount of time that was spent to create it. And so game companies are really looking at people and saying like, what do you think this is worth? And they're A/B testing it to the point where it's in their favor, right? Like they're like, we know that you will spend money on this item if it costs this much, right? And in a quantity that is enough to make all of this other work, giving you a free game, giving you all this kind of stuff for charging basically nothing or very little to get money out of you, right? So yeah.
So A/B testing, we should probably explain that a little bit. If you're playing a mobile game or a free-to-play game, you might get an update. You and 10,000 other people might get an update that's slightly different than another 10,000 people somewhere else, randomly picked. and the differences are going to be like the price points, or maybe the UI interface, or there could be any number of minor differences that they're testing, and they're just testing to see out of those 10,000 people compared to this other 10,000 people, who does it more, who does it less. And so that's the A group and the B group. So that's the A/B testing.
You know, Daniel, it's interesting how we can go a little astray here and think about what it means to price things fairly, right? And where traditionally you might think about the labor that went into it and the value of that labor, and compare that to what the price should be. Labor plus, let's say, some extra for profit, and you got a price. But here you just got a straight up market transaction of what is someone willing to pay for this. And I was especially thinking when you were talking about, what if that artist is gone and I'm just instructing my AI to create yet another one of these in a slightly different version, right? Then the labor is minuscule, and But okay, let's get back to battle passes. Okay, so one of the main things that people worry about today when it comes to monetization is that a lot of times it seems to design kind of to be addictive, right? In the sense of you're getting players to play longer and more often. You're getting people's attention, you're keeping their attention. Is this a concern about battle passes? Because it seems like it would be the kind of thing the battle passes might be used for. Is it a concern, and is it a valid concern?
Yeah, I think it's valid insofar as like it's one part in the suite of tools that we mentioned earlier, which is like making sure that you're a daily player or a player that's engaging with it enough to like maintain the game's overall operation as a profitable like game enterprise, I guess. I think it can certainly to a certain extent like encourage like maybe playing too much. Like for instance, a battle pass to actually complete it like on the daily rate, I find takes about an hour, maybe 90 minutes. That's a lot of time, like you actually, if you actually want to be hitting those milestones every day, ensuring that you're ranking up at the rate that it kind of requires of you, it is going to require you to keep going in it. And that's where it gets into the pay to advance part of it, is like, if you're afraid of falling behind, you might end up spending more money to advance that, especially as you near the end of the season, when you might not be able to unlock that particular item after that season ends. So there is certainly, I think, they're definitely thinking about it. They're thinking like there are certain people who are going to be willing to spend extra money to finish it and to keep up. So it can encourage, all the kind of usual negative behaviors we associate with like, spending money and, compulsive decision making and that kind of stuff. I think they're still, broadly speaking, less problematic than loot boxes, because, loot boxes and randomness most people don't understand the statistics of how loot box works. And that's why companies have actually had to change how they work, because I think some governments, but also I think generally speaking, people kind of know now, it's like, all right, you can kind of actually be taking advantage of people's statistical knowledge to try and encourage them to spend lots of money over and over again. So I think that's like the biggest risk, is loot boxes. And on the other side of that is battle passes, which are, I think, a little bit less exploitative of certain kinds of psychological tendencies, but at the same time, they still definitely are designed to take advantage of a certain level of that, right? Like, I think without a doubt.
Yeah.
Then let's move from that to, you talked here about FOMO, right? And about how the fear of missing out is something that really can be played on. The other kind of concern, beside this, just a straight up time, and it's interesting what the battle passes do here. So are we talking about you're just playing the game for an hour to do this, or are you doing kind of special things to just fulfill these grinding goals that you need to get the stuff? Which one is it, or does it depend on the game? Because notice, if the game is like you're playing the game for an hour, you're enjoying the game for an hour, that seems very different than they got you to grind out some stuff because you're fearing of missing out on this season's cool items in order to get you, let's say, my cynical self, get you frustrated with this and just pay the money.
Yeah.
Which one is it? Are you typically just playing, or are you more like grinding or paying?
They give you, yeah, it's a bit of both. The way they work generally is they give you little tasks, little goals to do. So in Fortnite, when it was first released, it was like, hey, drop in this particular place today, and you complete its goal.
But you're dropping as part of your Fortnite game.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in Apex Legends, it's normally like, use an assault rifle and do this much damage, or it's like, get this many downs of enemies, or like finish in the top 5. So like to get all of these things, it kind of like creates gameplay goals. So again, these are very understandable things that we're familiar with already from playing different kinds of games. But like with a target, so if you are thinking about it, you're probably, if you actually want to do these things, you need to kind of tailor your gameplay around them. Normally not excessively so, but you'll need to play 2 to 5 games probably, which could last from anywhere 30 seconds to 20 minutes to get them. Yeah.
So I play Marvel Puzzle Quest every day. All my friends know I've been doing this for over 5 years. It's probably I can't imagine. Like 5 years ago, if you had asked me if I was going to play a single game for 5 years straight every day. It doesn't have the battle passes like you're talking about. There's no pay, but it does have a lot of these sort of timed event sort of things, including a daily thing. And yeah, I see all of what you're talking about in that game, where it's like most of the time I can hit the daily goals just in my normal play pattern. But there's 1 or 2 that I have to do a few extra little things for in order to hit the one that gives me the next level of reward.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Though in this case, potentially I could add a whole bunch of things that you need to do that might be different than your game pattern that will get you to stick around longer than
right. And it may or may not. Like there's another tier of things that I could do that I usually don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, all right, I don't need to. I want to hit that level, but I don't necessarily care to hit that level.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Daniel, do you know anything about the impact on fun? No, because you said right. You're playing the game, but you might have to tell your game essentially because you're now looking to be a completionist and kind of hit all these kind of targets, and it becomes a little bit more about hitting the targets than, let's say, normally playing your game. I would think that might make your game less fun, and fun is a currency too.
Yeah, no,
it might be worth a minute of Andy, maybe not. Andy, do you think that's wrong? That's a wrong way of putting it. It's something of value. I don't know. I mean,
it is something of value. Yes.
Maybe currency is not the right word.
Yeah, we currency. When we think about currencies, we think about things that we spend in order to accomplish something. So fun is something that we get out, not necessarily something that we put in.
Okay, so in this case, I would be giving up some fun of the way I normally play in order to complete the objective I need for the battle pass. That's not spending fun. Fair enough.
Yeah. And yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, I think like to
I
kind of think.
You're saying though, I totally see what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's like what you give up if you consider it giving up. And again, it's like this is one of those things where like everyone plays games in ways that are different from everyone else. Oftentimes there's like a broad bucket of people that play in certain ways, but like we all find fun in different places. And I think I appreciate having a little goal every day that might be outside of my normal min-max kind of like. If you're like really like win oriented, you might be incentivized to like never change from what is like maximizing winning for you, right? Well, it's kind of fun to like, I'm going to try and do something that I'm actually not very good, play with a character that I don't like or have a lot of skills with, but this gives me opportunity to play with them, and I wouldn't normally, but because I'm trying to complete this objective. And that's why people like achievements. Like that's why like Steam has built achievements into every single game they have. This is why Xbox, Microsoft, again, like they kind of pioneered this and kind of left it hanging a bit. Now it's like tied into all of like Microsoft's like weird like Xbox Live points where you can like unlock raffles to win Xboxes and things. I don't know. It's very weird. But
it's
yeah.
all very exogenous, right?
Yeah.
It's everything outside of the game, and people want to play the game and they don't care about exogenous rewards generally.
Exactly.
Speaking.
Yeah. And but like it's funny that like these actually like these exogenous rewards like had something interesting about them that is like now quite popular, which is this idea of like creating little challenges that like might shake up your normal daily play routine if you're doing something. Having an arbitrary goal that isn't necessarily completing the game or winning, but is something else. So there is some fun to be found in that. Like I like being challenged to do something that I'm not necessarily great at, but at the same time, it can also create new forms of frustration where you can't achieve the one thing they've told you that you have to do, right, to get the thing today. So,
but even if you can't achieve it, you can still pay for it.
Yeah, well, and if at the end of the day you haven't done enough, you can still throw some cash in, and
Let's talk about kids. Same frustrations, same psychological dynamics, same ability to have fun. But now we've got kids that may not be particularly good at understanding their motivations, the kind of implications of the things they do. Same fear of missing out. Every season, my son is excited about the changes in Rocket League. Every season, he comes to me for money. Right? What do you think? What do you think about kids in these kind of situations?
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be. I think Fortnite is huge for a reason, and part of that is Fortnite skins for your avatar are ridiculously popular with a certain age group. Right. People really like them. They're really fun. They get every single brand deal possible. It's kind of like, it's like Fortnite really like went from having the most boring skins, like, because again, I was playing it right when it was kind of starting out in that first year. And you look at it now and it's like this changed dramatically and wildly in ways. And it's so much more high budget. It's so much more in tune with popular culture and now influences popular culture. So yeah, children are a part of that. But what's interesting about that, which again, because I'm doing all this research on advertising right now with YouTube and other kinds of things, and children are not a good audience to target because they don't have any money. So all they can do is beg their parents for money, which, you can say that is like you get begged. But you still kind of like, you're the one that can also stop them from spending the money, right? So it's interesting. I wonder how much money they can get from young players relying on their parents to give them money. I mean, teenagers would be a good target, I think, demographic, but even then they have limited spending capacity compared to adults with, much higher with a credit card, right?
I think it's been a well-known fact that if you want to get to somebody's money, go at them through their kids.
Yeah,
it's hard to say no to your kids,
right?
Yeah, and it led to all kinds of regulation, around especially children's television, right? So and advertising. So it's
right,
been controversial for
Daniel.
Well, yeah, since G.I. Joe came on the air in the early '80s. Right.
Yeah.
I pretty much at this point have my son gets his allowance through a credit card that or not a credit card, kind of debit card.
Right. You put money in.
And right. It has the Xbox, and it's tied directly to the Xbox, and he gets to make choices about how to spend his money. And when that money runs out, the money runs out. But it's interesting. I mean, it's because it's and my son is, he's 9.5. So, we're trying to teach him financial literacy through this. And part of that is taking responsibility for paying for his own game. And it's and I can see how that as, I think these things are still pretty new. Like, kind of these credit card, not credit card, but kind of debit card for little kids that you can put into the game, which makes it so much easier as a parent to deal with that stuff. But I'm curious what we're going to learn about, if people are going to learn about kids spending when it comes to things like this.
Yeah. And it's a huge issue with other, obviously Roblox is, as a very, I think, problematic relationship with both the people who use it to create things, but also the markets that they've created and the kind of wildly, kind of all over the place prices of things that people sell on it. It is, but I think also there's something to be said about like a low cost, low risk, place to like spend and learn about buyer's remorse and I don't know, all these kinds of things that everybody has to learn about. Like, what does it mean to have money and spend it on things? And like, there's something to be said about digital virtual markets that as, places for people to experiment and play in that. Like, I think it's very different than what I grew up with, what I'm sure you grew up with. Like it, yeah. So I think certainly something to be said for it, right? Like, I'm not saying that they should be these places, but I think there's going to be a lot of learning happening. Like, so,
right.
Yeah.
Do you feel like any of these things are overly manipulative?
I would probably need to read more research on the psychological element, because I know Epic got hit with that really big fine about dark patterns. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I don't know enough about HCI research to know what a legal dark pattern is.
Right.
Other than the fact that
human computer interaction.
Yeah.
HCI.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yep.
And the whole idea of like, changing up which button approves the transaction, if it's normally X, change it to B or something, right? Like those are like obviously very clear manipulative things. I don't think Fortnite was like guilty of the worst kinds, but they definitely would be found to have, basically enough people with children have been like, I feel like I was taken for a ride by this tech company selling cosmetics. And I think battle passes can certainly be a part of that, for sure. But I don't think they're like, I think it's more the issue is like how our, I guess like how are online markets being designed, and whether or not they're being designed to be manipulative or not.
All right. Daniel, what do you want to leave our guests with?
So like, I think my thing about like battle passes is like that they really only exist in an ecosystem where every game is competing for your attention and money. Like, it's like, we haven't had them until now, in the last 10 years really. Right. And so like, why is that? And it's because the competition for users, for eyeballs, for players, all this kind of stuff is so intense that it led to a marketplace where, games are being given away for free, and to monetize and keep people engaged with them, game companies have turned to things like battle passes. And I think the battle pass might come and go, but I think that whole context, that political economic context, is going to kind of be the future of games, which is, everyone's competing for your attention, and people are getting paid a lot of money to find out how to keep you engaged. So, yeah.
All right. That that's the future. Everybody's fighting for our attention.
It's not just the future of games.
It's the future of
everything.
It's the
future of everything.
It's everything. Yes. Yeah. It's just the competition is wild, right? So
and it's and it's interesting because there are more and more ways constantly to get your attention, and the battle for your attention just seems to be growing and growing and growing and growing. Thank you very much, Daniel Joseph. Thanks for coming on our show.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
GP, good podcast, guys.
You can subscribe and listen to all of our episodes wherever you listen to podcasts.